When I bought my current house, my next-door neighbors immediately knocked on my door to introduce themselves. Both were incredibly kind, which was a great start. My house is waterfront on a canal, perfect for keeping my boat in the water right in my backyard. However, this also means sacrificing privacy, as the house across the canal has a direct view into my yard. From the start, even when I first viewed the house, I wasn't a fan of the house across the canal. It looked neglected and was an eyesore when I sat in my backyard. For almost 2 weeks after moving in, every night before bed, I'd look out my window and see the house across the canal completely dark. I wondered if it was a second home for the owners, but then one night, things changed. On the same day my brother helped me launch my boat and bring it to my dock, I was about to shut the blinds in my bedroom when I noticed a light on in the house across the canal. In what appeared to be a living room, there was a man standing by the back door, looking outside. So, there was someone living there after all. The man wore sweatpants and a long-sleeve shirt and had a full head of grayish hair, looking to be around 50 years old. It seemed like he might be looking at my windows, but it was more likely he was just gazing out into the yard, even though it was pitch black. I closed my windows and went on with my night. The next day after work, I came home, set my stuff on the kitchen table, and went to the backyard to plant some grass seed. I couldn't help but notice the man standing at his back door again, watching me. This time it was obvious. We made extended eye contact before I looked away, not wanting to wave and seem weird. I tried to pretend I didn't notice him. One day I had friends over to take the boat out, and both when leaving and returning, I didn't see the man at his door. I had only seen him twice, but already I felt paranoid whenever I was outside, always glancing at his door. A few nights later, I looked out my bedroom window again and saw him at his door. I wondered how long he would just stand there. It was bizarre. I turned off my lamp and stood aside the window, peering out to see if he'd keep standing there even after I turned the light out, and he did. I must have watched for 3 minutes and he didn't move. I shut my blinds and went about my night. I decided to keep my blinds shut past sunset from then on. I went to bed, wondering how to confront the situation or if I even should. I considered going out to the dock and waving, trying to talk to him, or even knocking on his door to introduce myself, but all those options felt stressful. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard something in my backyard. Someone was on the deck. I went to the window but couldn't see from my upstairs view. Before I could go downstairs, there was a loud crash. The sound of shattering glass came from below. I ran downstairs, grabbed a knife and the phone to call 911. The backyard window was broken and a brick lay on the floor. I feared seeing someone hiding, but thankfully there was no one. I called 911 requesting officers to come ASAP. Before they arrived, I peeked out the broken window and turned on the deck light. Whoever did this had already run, but at least they didn't enter the house. When the police arrived, I showed them the window and brick, explaining my suspicion about the guy across the canal who had been watching me. They asked if he had any reason to have an issue with me, and I said no, I didn't even know the guy. I asked them to arrest him, but they said they'd knock on his door first. When the officers returned, they said nobody lived there. A neighbor told them the house had been foreclosed months ago and the old tenant evicted. I asked if it could be someone from the bank, but they couldn't be sure. They suggested installing cameras outside. The police left a car parked in front of my house for reassurance. The next morning, I went to the house and tried the doors. The front was locked, but the back was unlocked. I quietly stepped inside, but hearing a noise from upstairs, I quickly left and returned to my house. I had my window fixed and installed doorbell cameras. I haven't seen the man again. I don't know if he's still in there, if he threw the brick, or why. Thankfully, things have been fine since. After living with my parents for 28 years, moving into my first house was quite a shock. In July 2022, I finally moved in, and my new home is just a 30-minute drive from my parents' house, so we're still close. At my parents' house, I was always woken up at night by my dad going up and down the stairs. He's a chronic insomniac and constantly needs water or bathroom trips. I hoped that having my own place would mean peace and quiet, but unfortunately, I inherited my dad's light sleeping habits. My new house has a small, unfinished basement with laundry and a boiler room, a first floor with a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and dining room, and an upstairs with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. One bedroom is my office, another is a workout room. For the first few days, my dad helped me move in furniture and set up the place. After that, it was just minor decorating and smaller tasks. About a week into moving in, I had pretty much settled and felt at home. One Sunday night, I could tell I was going to have trouble sleeping because I was wide awake. I took a melatonin and a sleeping pill, and within an hour, I was out like a baby. Usually these help me sleep through the night, but this night was different. I woke up to a noise outside my room, dazed and confused from an intense dream. The noises were familiar, footsteps on the stairs. My dad used to wake me up with his nightly trips. I tried to ignore it, not immediately realizing that those footsteps couldn't be my dad's. I snapped back to reality and listened. The footsteps stopped. Fully awake, I wondered if it was an auditory hallucination, something engraved in my memory. Nervously, I called out, "Dad?" But no one answered. I went into the hallway and turned on the lights as I passed each room. Reaching the stairway, I looked down and saw a tall man in a mask at the bottom, looking up at me. It didn't feel real. I didn't see any weapons, but I wasn't about to confront him. I screamed at him to get out of my house, my voice shaking. To my surprise, he turned and left through the front door. I ran down to lock it behind him. When I called my dad, I heard the back door slam shut. There was a second person in the house who I hadn't seen. I was in full panic mode. My dad picked up, questioning why I called him instead of the police. I quickly called the police, and the operator asked me a million questions while I waited. The arriving officers interviewed me, asking for a description of the intruders, what they stole, and which direction they left in. Unfortunately, I didn't watch them leave, so I couldn't provide a direction or vehicle description. The only thing I could describe was that one of them was tall because of the mask. It didn't seem like they stole anything, but I didn't have anything valuable on display on the first floor. They entered through a kitchen window just big enough to climb through. Experiencing a home invasion is something you hear about on the news, but never think will happen to you, especially right after moving into your first house. I wish I could have been more helpful to the police in identifying them. Now, I sleep with a knife next to my bed. Cheryl and I have been together for 10 years and got married 2 years ago. Recently, we bought a house in Waycross, a small inland town in Georgia. Our new home is on a quiet street with a large property that sits in front of a wooded area, which appealed to us. We plan to adopt a dog and raise kids, so we wanted a spacious yard for them to play in. We both work similar shifts. I get home around 5 and she arrives around 6. The first 2 nights in the house went smoothly as we spent the weekend unpacking. However, on Monday night, things took a strange turn. We were in bed, having turned off the lights about 20 minutes earlier, when we heard loud music coming from our backyard. Our nearest neighbors are far enough away that we couldn't mistake their music for being in our yard. This was definitely coming from our backyard, and it wasn't party music. It sounded like very old, staticky, vintage music. After exchanging horrified glances, I opened my window to hear more clearly. It was a song from the 1940s, "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf" by Henry Hall. Despite its happy tune, it was eerie and horrifying to hear it coming from our backyard. We were still learning the house layout, but figured there must be a backyard light switch downstairs. I ran down and turned on the backyard lights, but saw no one. As I stepped outside, I realized the music was coming from the woods. The song ended, and there was silence again. I assumed it was a prank to scare the new residents, but it wasn't appreciated. The next night, the same thing happened. Shortly after we turned off the lights, loud music started again, this time playing "Tiptoe Through the Tulips." Cheryl and I were genuinely worried now. Looking out the window, I saw something on the grass. It was an old radio blaring the creepy song. I turned it off and held it up, yelling to my wife that someone had left it to scare us. Suddenly, Cheryl started screaming for me to run inside. She said there were people standing behind me. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to see 3 figures standing in the woods, facing me. They weren't moving, just standing there. I yelled and ran back inside, slamming the door behind me. Cheryl was upstairs, hysterical. I called the cops, who arrived quickly. We explained everything, showed them the radio, and asked if they could take it for evidence. They checked the woods briefly, probably to deter anyone still out there. When the police left, we still felt vulnerable and scared, but thankfully, the people never returned. This incident happened only a few weeks ago. If they come back, I'll try to get it on video.